So here's like the M. Night Shyamalan kind of twist of this whole story. So first thing, I don't go to the first article when you end up Googling, and of course when you end up Googling it's the worst thing to do. Doctors do not want you to do that, to look up anything whatsoever, to self-diagnose yourself, as they end up calling it. So found this article here, and I found certain points about this so-called demisexuality. And if you end up reading it here, it's different points. Don't like physical touch. Most people notice that I really do not like physical touch, and it takes a while to get anything from holding my hand to having any kind of hug. Obviously, end up growing up and feel a bit different. Enjoy sex, but underneath specific circumstances. This one here doesn't really apply to me, which is really a problem, because at this point, I have to admit, even at this age, which I usually end up bragging about, that I look much younger than it, I still haven't really found anybody, but I do believe why I actually haven't found anybody, and it's not just because I've been keeping it for a reason, and this is part of this reason. So the thing is, if we end up going to the top here, we end up explaining it here. The basic idea here is that, as it says here, the concept, a specific, slightly more sexually charged variation of asexuality. If you're not familiar with asexuality, that's basically people which are not interested in sex but sort of prefer the more romantic side of it, or just being together, to be honest. I mean, it makes perfect sense. If it makes people happy, it makes people happy. But the thing is that I was beginning to get worried that I'm that. But the thing is that I'm not happy being that. So there's obviously some kind of conflict there. So the thing is, they've no desire for sex whatsoever here. It refers to a person who does not feel sexual attraction to another person unless they feel a strong emotional connection to them first. So this is now describing the actual demisexuality with a strong emotional connection. Now this is going to end up coming up all the time, but the thing is, you end up seeing it here, you end up seeing that's all. The many demisexual people don't seem that different than anyone who is a bit skittish about sex, so basically saying they don't seem that different than people which are shy away from talking about it and stuff like that. And I actually honestly believe that yes, I am part of this orientation. So as we end up heading down, we've got again physical touch, feeling different, blah blah blah. This isn't very interesting. This doesn't really apply to me. This completely applies to me. Tinder and dating websites are completely useless to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know what a nice person looks like, but I can't imagine much more than that. I mean, that's just a case. I mean, they might be nice. I mean, I sometimes end up judging some girls by their makeup and think, you got that much makeup on and everything like that, you're obviously gonna be a bit of pain in the ass, kind of thing. It's like, you're not gonna be nice because you're more concerned about having all this splattered over your face than your natural self, and you don't typically think like that. You just end up being attracted to a face. So it's not really any good to me. The dating websites are pretty much useless anyway. I've got some dates out there, and I've had some times where I've gone around girls' houses and stuff like that, and basically sat down and watched romantic comedy and just end up sitting down and with their cats and everything like that, and then it's like bye afterwards, and it's kind of like an awkward hug that I don't want afterwards, and I kind of like get on bus and everything like that, and all of a sudden it's like, you know what, I had unfortunately for that person, I didn't have any sort of connection to them whatsoever. It just seemed like I was there awkwardly. That was just there awkwardly and just sort of observing this going on, and not really sure how to do anything back. But as we already described here, we described earlier going up here about the lack of sexual signals going to and fro. I'm moving my hands now, but you're only seeing my screen. You're only seeing my screen here because I gotta admit, I've become pretty damn good at editing videos and so forth. The talking bit is absolutely terrible, as you can tell, but at least I'm confident enough to string on with the subjects. So here we go. prudes. Oh, you're a prude, you know, you're not interested in it. So a few people might notice that I completely avoid the situation that I talk about sex, because to be entirely honest, it seems like something that you have to have for a relationship, but I kind of feel like it's not necessary. There's probably other ways to do it. You know, it just kind of seems like something which is like, not disgusted by it or anything like that, but it's kind of like, do we really have to? You know, that kind of seems embarrassing of sorts. You know, if we end up doing that, that's going to be like super awkward. Um, so that's how I kind of feel about that. And I honestly prefer the idea of friendship. The sort of staying together afterwards, the romantic aspects of all of it. So here you go. Long for a relationship, but not for physical touch. So, you know, pull away sometimes. I mean, it's happened before that somebody has approached me and I've kind of yanked myself away, and always thought it was something to do with a circle of trust, or the fact that I didn't want to be touched or anything like that. And there are a few mental things that you can have, that you don't like people touching you and stuff like that. You don't like hugs. You don't like people coming into your inside your comfort circle. And that's what I thought it was, to be honest. But this also matches up. This also matches up perfectly. And perhaps some people have seen this body language of me. Apparently you're not alone. If anybody wants to, that's actually part of the flag, which is within the sexual spectrum, or was it lesbian, gay, bi, transgender. I'm gonna get the initials mixed up all the time. I'm gonna get used to saying that over the time, because I'm sure it'll be a very familiar thing, but everybody knows what I'm talking about here. So afterwards, you don't get the hookup culture. Yeah, it is absolutely disgusting. People going around in nightclubs and stuff like that. It's like, how on earth can you randomly make out with somebody, even if you're drunk with control? It's like, I can't do that. I get drunk. I'm not going to randomly walk over and make out with somebody. It just doesn't happen. It just seems like a totally random thing to do. It's something I cannot understand, how you can have a connection to somebody without even actually having an emotional connection. It's like, you just look at somebody, it's like, they look nice, I'll see if I don't get accused of sexual harassment. It just seems completely stupid to me, as you can hear in my words. So I don't get that at all. But as I previously explained, I also am unable to throw the flirting backwards and forwards. So then we end up going down to this. Not as horny as the rest of the world seems to be. Well, most people that know me, yeah, they're probably gonna say that they, you know, behind closed doors, most people are probably gonna say, yeah, he's not really. I mean, he's not bothered by half the things. I mean, I've got people that send me these random bloody porno clips all over the place and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, so what? I just ignore that. Why do I ignore it? And I'm not really interested in it. So emotional bonds are extremely important to me. So a lot of people notice that, and I'm friends with a lot of people, and it is incredibly important. I don't want to fall out of friends with anybody else, and there has been cases where I have been stressed, and I really have fell out with friends over trivial and sometimes serious things. Sometimes it's just a matter of perspective. Sometimes it's like, it's entirely possible that both of us were right in some decisions. It's entirely possible that one side was right and the other wasn't, but I'm not really going to talk about that. But basically, I don't like falling out with people. I do have a thing in the past where I did literally have to abandon a friend for a very, very serious reason. And once again, I'm not talking about that too. That's probably never going to come up, but it's something that I need to resolve. If anybody wants to find out about that, they can talk about it to me in private, and I might divulge some details about that, about the friend which I essentially had to completely blacklist from my life. And I still wonder if morally I did the correct thing for that, but I'm sure in the case, if I would explain, anybody else would do exactly the same. So as we head down here, self-sufficient. Well, nobody really wants to read this basically, but I think everybody kind of knows what this means. It's it's entirely possible to have a relationship with your left or right hand, so forth. I mean, that's a pretty disgusting way to say it, but I'm not going to say any more of it. I'm not saying that word. It's about connecting. So it's like there is, you get the emotional bond apparently, and once you get the emotional bond, which is like the friendship, then you can end up bypassing the touch. And then you can get towards touching people, and you become comfortable with each other. So it becomes fine for it afterwards. But the friendship needs to come before the actual sexual impulses. When other people's lives end up working the other way around, people would say, no, it doesn't. You know, you're looking for somebody that makes you happy and do all that. And I'm very sorry to bring it to you, but unfortunately, the way that the human race works is attraction. And then, well, not necessarily friendship, but coexisting together. It's just, can you coexist together? And as you can see, a lot of the time in life, there are a hell of a lot of cases where they don't, and a lot of people don't feel bad about it. And I will feel incredibly bad about that. I would feel like things are very wasted, because I don't think I would connect in somebody on a level like that. And if I did, it would be very, very difficult afterwards. So don't go flirting. We talked about this. I mean, loads of people have probably seen this. It's like, I've been standing around at conventions and stuff like that, and they just end up talking, and it's like, it's girls, and they're like twiddling their hair and everything like that, and you know, it's like, it isn't until I see it afterwards that somebody ends up pointing out all these kind of signs, and it's like, what am I meant to do? And they're like, well, you know, you flirt back, and it's like, well, how? And then it's kind of like another return of like, well, you don't need to know how to flirt, you just do it. No, I don't do it. My body language, it doesn't seem to happen until we end up getting down to the point of connecting and being friends. So after that, maybe you might start doing, or I might start doing a little bit more sort of body language here and there and so forth. So tend to date friends, which of course is like blah 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 blah, the friend zone. But that's your favourite place. So the thing is, if anybody's familiar with the phrase platonic, it's just basically friendships which are sort of non-sexual, but just hanging around each other because you absolutely love each other for who you are and what you believe in. We could probably look that up there. It's something to do with Plato or other. Just embarrassing myself here. But anyway, yes, we end up going further down. You can see all this here. You see. So it's like, you got to hang out with somebody to know them and then get connected to them. Once again, this isn't a problem. We spoke about this earlier. Because the thing is, apparently what ends up happening is that you end up, I'll highlight it here, you create their own mental fantasies. So the thing is that it's not the physical act of sex, it's the whole context of the person they're with. So the thing is that you can imagine being connected to that person, or that person being somebody that you like to be connected to, or a idealistic version of somebody, or just somebody that could exist, that you would like to exist, and think of that instead. So there you go, that pretty much covers it, and this is what I kind of think I am, and you just end up looking at it and you end up going, oh, this is like some kind of pop culture kind of article and everything like that. So we'll get some more things in a bit. Oh, yeah, you probably noticed what this is. It's Wikipedia. Wikipedia probably isn't the best way to end up researching information, but the thing is, if you end up clicking down below, you can end up finding the relevant articles and everything. It's if you were writing an essay, you can find the books to do with it and everything like that. So any point which is here is covered here. The quote the bibliography, it's all there. So the thing is, what I'm basically saying is that, like, Wikipedia, sometimes it is pretty reliable, to be honest. It's like a massive essay which is written by a lot of people. You just see all these details here. You can see here it seems to be a thing. So anyway, we're going to go up here and we're going to have a look at grey asexuality, which pretty much is the same thing. So apparently it's identified with grey asexuality, grey A, greys, or grey A's, A's umbrella. So there is this too. We'll try and go back to that later. That's a community I intend to join, because the reason why I'm making this video will become quite clear, because you're probably not convinced, and to be honest, it seems to be such a rare thing that I'm getting incredibly frustrated that people don't believe it exists. So this video is the fact it does exist. So the thing is, it's actually a part of the Pride. It has its flag. This is a general one, but we're going to ignore that because that doesn't really matter, because the demisexuality does. So may experience secondary sexual attraction after close emotional connection has already formed, which basically sounds like a pretty good friendship with a lot in common, or emotional triggers with things, or hobbies, or hobbies, interests, memories of things together, and regularly being together, even though you're not technically together. So demisexuals are considered as part of the asexual community because for the most part they don't feel sexual attraction. Many demisexuals are only attracted to a handful of people in their lifetimes, or even one person. Now this completely fits in with my idea that I was looking for a soulmate, and I always felt like I was looking for a soulmate because I never thought I connected with anybody. But when I do connect to people, they do happen to be friends, and I have really ruined and confused a lot of girls by just suddenly turning around and having a kind of Jekyll and Hyde reaction. And of course, you know, you don't want the Hyde, you want to hide the Hyde. But what would happen if you couldn't hide the Hyde is what I'm trying to say here. So many demisexuals are also uninterested in sex, so they have a lot in common with asexuals. So we discovered we talked about asexuals earlier, and asexuals were basically people that don't really have an interest in sex, and occasionally they can be repulsed by the idea of sex. Now I wouldn't say I'm entirely that, but I would say that there are a lot of things about the concept of sex that just kind of seems like something that just has to happen, to be honest. It's like it's inconvenient that you have to do that thing in order to be together, in my opinion. It just doesn't seem right. I mean, not discussing as such, but it's like it's just I don't know how it would work. I mean, by this point, I think I already explained, you know, by this point, I think I said my age earlier, and I think I ended up pointing out the fact that yes, it's another admitting things. Yes, I'm a virgin, but the thing is that we're coming down to the point of why I might be. So demisexuality is different for different people because there's several reasons. One and foremost is being the definition of emotional bond varies from person to person. It seems to be people I see regularly, and people that make me laugh and put a smile on my face, and that I have deep respect for in their beliefs and that, to be honest. So somebody that I can end up having a lot in common with, but at the same time they don't have to like everything that I like. Sometimes it's nice to talk about all things that I like and stuff like that, and maybe that's the emotional bond, I don't know. And it's another reason it varies is because people in the sexual spectrum communities can often switch labels throughout their lives. Fluidity in orientation identity is a common attitude. So the thing is, what we're trying to point out here is that for some people, demisexuality can bypass in entire sex and genders, basically physical barriers, you are literally attracted to somebody's mind and the way they think. The other stuff is sort of like a bonus, really. I don't really know how far it goes, because it's like most people that I've ended up sort of taking a liking to, most of the girls have been pretty nice looking girls, to be honest. But of course, if I consider somebody to, not be ideal for me, I'm not really going to start engaging in a really like physical deep conversation with them, because there still is a attraction sort of element of it. But what we're talking about is the facial features and smile and so forth, and little bits of body language. And we're not actually talking about bums or breasts or anything like that. That really doesn't matter. The whole shape kind of matters to me. So that kind of becomes a little bit confusing. And I got a lot of respect for women, to be honest. If not, So anyway, going back to it. So the thing is, what it basically ends up saying is that demisexuals can end up having this sort of connection and any romantic orientation. So the thing is that essentially a demisexual doesn't know what they are, and it's completely different in the way that a bisexual sort of is happy with men and women, and a pansexual is pretty much the whole spectrum entirely. But the thing is that those people are aware of what they're attracted to due to the flirting going backwards and forwards. Now, that stuff doesn't start happening until after the friendship, in my case. So the thing is, I don't know how far this goes, which is why I've been describing concerningly that I'm everything but nothing, because the thing is, most of the time I'm not interested in anybody whatsoever at all, and sort of like asexual. I don't notice people around me, anything like that. I don't see any of that. I get frustrated the way people end up behaving in nightclubs, and I don't get that at all. The sort of physical touch aspects and stuff like that. It's like, oh, get away from me. And there has been a couple of cases where I've kind of leapt meters away from people trying to make moves, and it's like, why? That's kind of weird. Surely one way or another it would end up sort of you'd just go along with it, wouldn't you? Because it makes sense. So the thing is, a romantic attraction to no genders, grey aromantic, a romantic and feeling romantic attraction, deromantic, not feeling romantic attraction until an emotional bond is formed. So this could quite possibly be what I've got here. I'm saying got because I'm making it sound like some sort of mental illness or something, but it kind of isn't. But there are sorts of side effects to the sexuality. Here are a couple of words down here. We're just going to ignore these because I haven't had a chance to research these yet. But I'm sure we can do that later. But I've just been focusing on the stuff which I believe I am. So, which is this? This is a flag which coincidentally seems to have all my favourite colours except for grey. I'm a big purple fan. It's directly in the middle. Purple is a very important colour to me and always has been before I even knew about it. So that is a massive coincidence. So this flag here, if you don't believe it, this is actually part of the pride. I can end up showing that later. I might end up cutting it up, and I might end up slicing and editing it so you can see it. There is a nice picture of some badges and everything which you can end up buying, which friend ends up saying, which basically show the entire LGBT spectrum. So I might have done that now, I might not, I don't know, it depends how difficult it is to edit anyway. So So as we continue here, it's demisexuality is a general sexuality interlaced with an emotional connection. It is a common theme in romantic novels and been termed with coinage compulsory demisexuality. Within fictitious prose, a paradigm in sex only being truly pleasurable when when the partners are in love is a trait stereotypically more associated with female characters. So, it's a kind of fantasy. Um, it can be written for fantasy because it sounds amazingly romantic, doesn't it? It sounds perfect. So the romantic orientation of a grey A identifying individual can vary because sexual and romantic identities are not necessarily linked. So there is a spectrum within a spectrum here. So essentially, it's a lottery of what you're actually attracted to. Uh, just gotta find out by engaging with people, which I don't engage with a lot of people as much as I should. So I don't know how far down the rabbit hole this goes. I like to say rabbit hole because it does seem really quite crazy. But actually, I've become quite open to the idea. It's like, well, okay, if I'm attracted to people which I can have really intense and amazing sort of conversations and get on with activities with them and stuff like that. If that's what sort of gets me interested in them, then basically I'm kind of looking for anybody and not looking past physical barriers. The way that I would like to describe it is it's kind of like reading up that you're sort of kind of mythical creature, because like I said, people aren't believing in this even though it's here. All the stuff is here. There are some books which I'm considering buying which are all down here in articles written up about it. It's not a theory, it's a thing. It's in the actual spectrum. I am trying to find different communities and stuff like that to end up handling this, because as we ended up discovering, there are some side effects towards it, because everything earlier made it sound alright, and it just sounded like a variation of bi or pansexuality, although it can just end up staying in your normal hetero or homosexuality, or it can go even further. But either way, it can stay in one of those subsections, or it can go all over the bloody place. So it is literally a lottery of who you're attracted to until you end up engaging with them and connect on a emotional bond. Could even be sympathy of all things is what I read. So apparently it's pretty new, which is why I haven't heard of it, which is why every single person is denying it. It's like back in the old days, it's like you had dyslexia when it ended up turning up, and the dyslexia was around and everything. It's like, they don't have dyslexia, they're just stupid. ADHD, people with ADHD, I mean, it's definitely a thing now. It's been fully researched. They've got medication to kind of handle elements of anything like that. But you essentially had a naughty nightmare child, or just a generally hyperactive child that needed to calm down. And of course, it's impossible because it's just the way people are. So if you end up looking back at it, once people ended up coming out gay, that kind of over time, although it was, although a lot of people were really against it. I mean, let's be honest, in history, a lot of people were against it, and we're kind of lucky that we live in this world that sort of tries to forget as much as possible, and it's luckily that so many people are so forgiving of what happened before. But going back to what I'm talking about here is that then you had your whole kind of bisexuality which turned up, and that wasn't believed either. And then of course you had the whole kind of transsexuality and moving on from there, and pansexuality. And if you don't know what these things are, I mean, it's the 21st century. You should honestly know what these things are. No offense, you should know what most of these things are. It's quick Google with these words and you'll be able to find out. It's actually pretty amazing how much I can know about different sexualities without actually having engaged in any of it. So you can tell that I've definitely done my research to try and figure out exactly what I am, while I haven't been able to find anybody. It's definitely been conflict, and it's something that can break me down. And something as simple as a girl rejecting me gets me questioning exactly what I am. But it seems like it's not just a simple rejection, it's the fact that I'm emotionally connected to this person, that I feel like I'm with them at that point. So for them to end up doing something afterwards, it kind of feels like I'm breaking up from them, even though there was never anything in the first place. So it is very difficult in that respect. So now we've covered that, we're going to go to what is what I like to call the dark side of everything.